extremely grateful to James K. Johnson, the Dean of Arts and Humanities, and Dennis Malick, Kit Morris, Mike Watts, Sally Bach, and Robin Murray for going to the trouble to have me here. It's been a tremendous amount of complication, and it's all happening. I'm so glad to be here, and so dumbstruck to be able to talk to you in this astonishing facility. I feel humbled to be anywhere near this building. It's remarkable, and also somewhat challenged, having just come from a fascinating workshop on screenwriting from Craig Titley and Luke Ryan, who made the point very clearly that you really should never talk for more than about 5 lines at a time. Because we've all developed a kind of cinematic consciousness in a certain kind of way. Everything we experience is a tiny bit like a movie. And so this will be, for you, undoubtedly a profoundly boring movie, because I'm going to speak for about an hour, but there will be some clips in the middle. And I just want to warn you in advance, if you can't handle that, don't worry if you have to walk out. This is called Big Moments of Small Performance, the character acting of Joan Allen. The pleasure of watching narrative cinema is almost always taken for granted by audiences. It involves a complex negotiation on the viewer's part, just as much as on the filmmakers, regardless of whether the film in question is a simplistic cartoon from the early days of cinema, like Mickey's Follies, 1929, or a subtle contemporary evocation of the underside of political life, like The Contender. Watching a movie, we are always hard at work, trying not only to understand and appreciate the filmmaker's particular language of expression and to grasp the status and reality of the material being shown. Is it fantasy? Is it dream? Is it the banality of the everyday? Not only to recognize and respond to aesthetic features such as musicality, graphic design, and poetry, and to evaluate and enjoy the authenticity or exaggeration of performance, but also, especially if we know something about the way motion pictures are made, to acknowledge particular strategic and technical challenges that faced the production, and to study with fascination the ways in which they were met, often with supreme devotion and skill. This latter problem, the technical problem, is my focus today. What of a film was done that is supremely difficult to do for technical reasons? And through what applications of energy, skill, and concentration was success achieved? While one could address many technical manifestations of cinema, in script writing, in set and costume design, in lighting and camera usage, in directing, in producing, particularly interesting is screen performance, a feature of movies that lay viewers and professional critics have long treated as given, and an element further that is almost always attributed to the inherent strengths and weaknesses, the inherent sensitivity or dullness, the shining talent or hopeless incapacity of the actor as an individual source of emanation. To the actor, in short, as an expressive engine, rather than as a locus of technical skills and arrangements that involve other workers as well. My project here is to give very close focus to some particular screen performances so as to show that there is something more to screen acting than has met the public eye. Although it never sees as much as it hopes to, that public eye has had, as it were, a big mouth, more than ready with pronouncements, certifications, compliments, and critiques. The critical voice has taken to itself a license to rhapsodize publicly on all our behalves, and sometimes to gripe, as much or more about our esteemed subject at this conference, Joan Allen, as about actors in general these days. Reviewing Death Race in late August, for example, Roger Ebert called Allen a sublime actress and an ethereal beauty. While Peter Hartlaub of the San Francisco Chronicle, even more excited, was amazed by, quote, the most underrated actress of her generation, unquote, and Michael Sragow in Baltimore gave the nod to her usual ace instincts. In online reviews, Stephanie Zacharek complimented her for having the eyes of a lizard and the soul of a ballbuster, and James Berardinelli took note of her notable stature. For an example of the kind of vituperation critics can deliver on a moment's notice, however, consider Lawrence Topman, who found Death Race so stunningly tedious, he thought watching it at full attention might be damaging to his cerebral cortex, and therefore reverted while writing his review to the reptilian brain. Someone say she famous actress, but how can it be? Has stiff face like silly Botox woman. Looks bored through whole movie. Regarding earlier film performances, Allen has been widely adulated as, in alphabetical order, exquisitely subtle, fiery, formidable and flinty, gifted, just about perfect, precise, always convincing, reliably superb, serious, shrewd, stellar, substantial, subtle, and unexpectedly touching. A figure with porcelain reserve and trademark intelligence and dignity. But glorious or problematic, as in the case of Topman and the ubiquitous Charles Taylor, who I'm sorry to say doesn't tend to like Joan Allen on screen much at all, highly regarded or darkly frowned upon, Allen's screen performances are far more labor-intensive on her part than these quick impressionistic critical responses reveal. To see what it is that she does, and I would argue, does with such polish and accomplishment, it is necessary to go beyond the essentially superficial critical response to the structural issues involved in screen acting. Acting is, after all, a kind of work, and there are technical and professional aspects to doing it well. To be sure, pleasing the critics and gaining favorable publicity through their notices is an important part of that work, but only insofar as good reviews that attract audiences to the box office can be interpreted by production executives as collateral in future casting decisions, not because as they work to grow in their careers, actors can afford to actually believe what critics say in the way that so many film viewers, and of course the critics themselves, do, and shape their work in response. Partly because of her technical virtuosity, and partly because her screen roles have been so varied and interesting, Joan Allen is an especially appropriate subject for the student of screen acting. She gives an exemplary demonstration of skill in dramatic situations that are relatively easy to isolate and focus upon. As well, she has maintained a very private life. As Joan Allen, the person, and an almost invisible backstage life as Joan Allen, the actor, an occupation that profitably occupies some of the time of that person, with the result that her relatively modest off-screen personae, spied in a few talk show appearances and the like, have not cluttered and contaminated the frame of her screen performances in the way that we often find with more outspoken types who have sincerely devoted themselves to using television and the press as hydraulic venues for mounting acting careers, but whose personae in television and the press are thus often indistinguishable from what we see on screen. Joan Allen is basically available only through performance, her public face. Beyond that, she is quiet, even modest. That she hails from Northern Illinois,